Hey, welcome back to Atypical Talk. This is a podcast where we have conversations that illuminate the intersection of faith, culture, and the common spaces of our humanity. I'm Abby.
I'm Allison.
And I'm Ron Burgundy.
Nice try.
That didn't work. No. Trying to think of something. No, I'm Joel.
Our first question today is, what are you streaming? We've talked about this a little bit, but it's changing all the time. So, Joel, what are you streaming right now?
Not much. It's football season, so after I get home from work on Sundays, I'm trying to watch the Colts. And my son Jack is obsessed with football right now, so he'll watch a little bit of NFL, then he wants to watch YouTube videos of like kids playing football, and then about 10 minutes after that, we're on the living room hardwood floor, and he wants to tackle me and practice playing football. So it's a lot of football. I'm also watching the latest Star Wars show, Ahsoka, and that's my can't miss TV. It comes out on Tuesdays. I try to catch it on Wednesday night and try to stay awake to watch it. And I don't mean that because it's boring. Our kids are a lot and life is a lot. But really enjoying it. It's got a lot of good Star Wars nostalgia, telling a cool new kind of story with that nostalgia. So I'm enjoying that, as I am a geek.
We are not streaming too much. I was telling Abby before this that I think like 2 months ago, maybe, we started watching Stranger Things for the first time. And I am still on episode 4.
Of season 1?
Of season 1.
Oh, man, that's like a long time ago.
Like, we do not watch that much TV. Right now, our daughter's in volleyball season, so that's a lot. And then we've got some home renovation things happening. And so if I get a quiet moment, I prefer to read.
Yeah.
So,
oh, what a nerd.
So what are you reading?
Making us look so uneducated and
no,
lazy.
the
streaming
I
question.
need, like, no noise. You know what I mean? So because life is just so noisy.
Do you not have an inner dialogue when you read? Like you hear that?
No, I mean,
okay.
I hear what I'm
Reading.
Yeah, I do hear what I'm reading, but like, I don't know. It's different than the noise of like a TV for me. So I just finished Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros.
It's all the rage right now.
It's so, again, part of my personality, typically if things are super popular, I'm like not gonna watch it. And which is why I'm just now into Stranger Things, like however many years ago that was. But it's so good, you guys. It is worth the hype. And it's it's
sci-fi,
not like,
fantasy,
it's
right?
not like anything I've ever read. Like, it's fiction, but I don't typically get into like fantasy. Dragons, not that kind of stuff. And so I was like, oh, I probably won't like this. I could not put it down, and the second book comes out in November, and I'm like, I cannot wait until
You have the
it comes out.
countdown going.
A friend of mine has already pre-ordered it, and so I've already put myself self-selected to be number 2 that reads the book. So,
But you haven't finished one yet either?
I finished it.
Okay, got you.
I finished it in like 3 days because I could not put it
it's that
down.
good.
Oh, wow.
So
That's
good.
awesome.
What about you,
cool.
Abby?
We just recently started Only Murders in the Building.
Okay.
That's on my list of what I need to watch.
It is
Yeah,
so
my
I've had
mom
so many
loved it.
people
I've
tell
never
me.
seen it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
many people
it's Martin Short, Steve Martin, and Selena Gomez.
There's the twist at the
Yeah,
end with
yeah.
Selena Gomez. Those
Like,
three.
what?
Their 3 characters live in the same apartment building in New York City, and a murder happens, and the 3 of them are like really interested in it, try to figure out what happened, and they decide to start a podcast about it called Only Murders in the Building. And it is just so good, and it's kind of quirky, but it's really heartwarming. Steve Martin and Martin Short are like these, grandfatherly
Yes,
characters
they're
to
so
Selena
good.
Gomez. They're wonderful in the show. I love it so much, and we don't have a whole lot of time to watch TV right now.
Yeah.
But when we get a chance, we're watching the next episode and the next episode and keep going through it.
Because it's a comedy, right? But it also
Yeah.
like plays into the true crime, fanaticism as well.
Yeah, and it's great because like in the last episode, they also like recognize that these true crime podcasts hurt the families of the person whose story is being told and stuff like that. And so it's kind of going into that aspect of like true crime podcasts, which I thought was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's on my list. I've got like a note on my phone of shows to watch.
Yeah.
And it's always longer than I mean, it's like I'm
Like,
always
will
a year
you ever get
behind.
through it?
Yes,
Yeah.
but that is on the list
Yes,
for sure.
it is very good. You should watch it. Our first topic today is a religion news article by Tyler Huckabee titled From Exorcist to Monster: How Hollywood Has Recast Catholicism. Horror movies have long relied on Catholicism as a defense against evil, but after the Catholic Church sex abuse scandal, Catholicism's pride of place in horror movies came crashing down. Recent horror movies such as Midnight Mass show how suspicious horror has become of institutional religion. The Conjuring universe uses Catholic imagery for scares, and the central terror of many horror movies is that the thing once thought safe turns out to be the instrument of destruction. Institutional religion can only attack so many people before its reputation mutates from savior to monster. Filmmakers have deployed some of movies' creepiest boogeymen against evangelicals who also have a darkening reputation. Horror gives shape to our real fears, amplifying the quietest whispers in the darkest parts of our heads. So why do you think religion has played such a big part in horror movies, from, being the good guy, doing the exorcisms, being the ones that save them in the end, to now being, some of the horrors?
I think it's probably streaming from actual religious trauma that people are facing and what they're dealing with in their daily lives. That idea, what's more terrifying than something that you once trusted for solace and peace and comfort and safety to become that thing that you're the most afraid of, the thing that can do the most damage. So as we've all been inundated with stories of spiritual leaders and their moral failures, scandals, and the terrible things that have happened inside of institutions of faith, not just Roman Catholicism for sure. It is that classic story of you think you're safe, but you're actually not. And there's something that is an archetype of a story that is just growing and growing. And I think we're seeing it play out in our fictional stories as well, because there is such a tragedy and a terror to being attacked by something that you once sought for relief and safety. And so I'd say that's a huge part of it, and why it's picking up steam, or at least why these stories are now making the faith community, faith leaders, the spiritual aspect, like not the heroes anymore, but the villains. That'd be my take on that. I think it's also just interesting that in an age of science and skepticism towards any kind of spiritual reality, where people are like, well, can't we just put away this thinking about, angels and demons and miracles and all these things? It's fascinating in a time where that gets a ton of cultural airplay, that these stories are still so massive and people are still so drawn to them. In a time where institutional religion and church attendance is dropping like crazy, people are still flocking and drawn towards these stories of spiritual matters. And I think that's fascinating, because I think that in just my conversations with people that aren't Christians or not part of any organized faith community, they're still interested in spiritual things, even if it's not inside of a church. I think a lot of times it's because of how they've seen institutions and churches handle things, and the dramas and the traumas that have come out of that they're like, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. And that's where that divide comes. But man, I just think that people are seeking spirituality more than ever before. Just look at the millions and millions of dollars that have come in through these kind of stories through Hollywood as well. So I'm encouraged that people are, they're still interested in things of spirituality
Right.
that are not, they're not like turned off to it in having this dualistic, I'm science minded, not spirit minded. I think that's encouraging. What's discouraging is how it seems to be that religious leaders and religious institutions have shifted from being the heroes to the villains of these stories. But I think I understand where it's coming from, and it's disheartening. But I think everything that's disheartening, you can identify it, know what reality is, and then live to tell a different story, right?
Well, I wonder if some of it also stems from thinking more of not like these movies where, the demon is the main villain or something like that, but more of like psychological horror movies. My husband and I watched Seven the other day for the first time, and the villain.
What's in the box?
The villain in that movie.
I have trauma now thinking about the end of that movie.
He's just like this religious nut job killing people based off of the 7 deadly sins, and I think you have villains like that because we've actually seen serial killers where they, whether they believe it or not, claim, oh, God told me to do this, and things like that. So I think part of it is, real life where you have people claiming insanity because God told them to do this, or they felt, a presence pushing them in this direction and things like that.
Yeah, it's like that religious fanaticism, that religious, like, God told me to do this kind of thing, and they go and do something heinous, something so evil. Man, why doesn't anybody ever called a religious fanatic for like giving all their money away, or like that's fanatic, right? That's crazy, or someone who refuses to go to war because they believe in peace over violence. Like that sounds like the religious fanaticism that would be different. But you hear these people that I heard God told me to kill everybody is awful.
Yeah.
I would also like to just confess in front of our dozens of listeners on the Atypical Talk podcast, maybe dozens, that I used to blame my wife for not seeing horror movies and scary movies because she didn't like them.
But the reality is, you're scared.
I can't do it either. And maybe I got soft in my middle age, but like it'll be like the new scary movie out, and I'm like at an afternoon, the kids are asleep. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch this. I start it. I'm like, nope. Can't do it. Blame it on Megan, but it's totally me. Not very tough.
No, it will always be me.
Abby,
so no.
You can be the connoisseur and tell us the things that we should watch, and then I'll read recaps about it so we can discuss it. But I won't actually watch it. So
that's fair. It won't be me either.
Our next topic today is completely flipping the switch here. We're talking about this school bus driver named Miss Sparkles. She wants to change the world, and she's succeeding. It's a Today article by Rachel Paula Abrahamson. Lori Brooks, a school bus driver in Michigan, is known as Miss Sparkles to the kids on her route, and it's easy to see why she earned the nickname. Teresa Weekly, a mother to two of the kids on Brooks' bus, recently filmed Brooks greeting riders on their first day back in the classroom. In the TikTok video, Brooks, a 60-year-old grandmother, is shown welcoming each child with a warm hug. She knows every student by name and the names of their parents. What you see in the TikTok video is how she is every day, Weekly says. She's just incredible at making everyone feel special. Brooks wears many hats. Not only does she provide safe transportation to and from school, she's a cheerleader, surrogate mom, and an advice giver. Brooks said, "No matter what you do, I think you can change the world a little bit. Everybody has such value in this life." So why do you think a story like this gets so much attention? I mean, it's a school bus driver who's being nice to the students she picks up, but why do you think it gets so much attention?
Well, I was going to say, Joel, you had school bus drivers growing up, right? Or did your parents take you to school?
No, I rode the bus. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. My kids will ride the bus.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, Abby, did you ride the bus? No.
My dad was a school bus driver.
Was he really?
I rode the bus one time.
Oh, yeah.
But
I love it.
Not all school bus drivers, I would say, have this same
demeanor.
Yes, I couldn't think of the right word. Yeah,
attitude.
They're not all the same.
Warm and fuzzy.
Yes, so I think that's why like this article in particular is getting so much attention, because it's not the norm, I don't think. And so I love that about her so much, because it does make such a difference. I did have one very amazing bus driver for several years, Winnie Rocky, who I loved. And so it does make a difference, because school is hard, and, friendships as kids are hard, and as adults. And so I just think if you have that person that you see when you get on the bus in the morning and they're excited, it's going to just kind of set the tone for your whole day or your kids. And so I just love it.
Yeah.
I love that she knows all their names and their parents' names and their siblings and stuff, because people want to be known. Like, they want to be called by name, not just like, hey, kid. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it probably catches traction because it elevates us from niceness to kindness.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just peacekeeping, doing the bare minimum, making sure not to rock the boat, but this is kindness. This is going the extra mile. This is adding value to the kids that she serves. She's not just taking them from point A to point B. She sees herself, the article says, as a cheerleader, a surrogate mom, and an advice giver, like a safe place for these kids. And I just think that's such a beautiful picture of going into a job that in church you might say it's like a secular job. It's not like a spiritual job, but she's bringing who she is into that job to add value and to bring joy and to be a safe place for those kids to where they're known and they're loved and accepted. And I think that's such a beautiful thing because it's not just nice. Nice would be opening it up and saying,
Good morning,
and then closing the door, which is fine, but that's normal. And this is not normal. This is extraordinary. And I think what a great challenge for all of us in the work that we do to not just do the bare minimum, just to do what's on the role description or to do what's just there, but to do it with that extra thing to make somebody feel special, to add value to them. I remember hearing John Maxwell, who's a pastor, author, leadership expert guy. And I remember him say once, like every day, he was trying to add value to 3 people that he would come in contact with, not just to have an interaction, but to add value to them. Sometimes that was encouraging them. Sometimes that was helping them and assisting them. Sometimes that was just catching them do something right and saying, way to go. And I just love that picture. And I think that's what Miss Sparkles is up to. And I think that's why it sort of grabs our attention, because it's not the ordinary bus driver story. I had a really grumpy bus driver who, I'm not going to say his name because he's probably not with us anymore, but anyway. But he just yelled at us, and it was like we were a bother.
Sit down,
shut up. That kind of a thing. So I love that. I think it's important. It's something that we can all take with us into whatever work we do, is like, how are we adding value to the people that we interact with every day? I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Your dad was a bus driver? I had no idea.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by that now. Side note.
For a short while, he was a bus driver. Kind of like in between, he was preaching at one church and then that church closed down. In between preaching at the next church, he was a bus driver for a while.
I remember it's actually a really great job for pastors to have a little side gig, because you do it in the morning, then you do a little bit in the afternoon, and got all the space in between.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah, we had a worship pastor at a previous church, and he drove a bus too. And I'm always just fascinated by the stories that come off the bus.
Yeah, so. Lucas's grandma was a bus driver too.
Yep. You come from a long lineage
of bus drivers.
Yep. So my next question is, growing up, did you have someone in your life that left an impact on you like Miss Sparkles does to these kids?
Well, yeah.
I'm sure a lot.
I had one person come to my mind immediately. It was the church that I grew up in. She was a Sunday school teacher, and she was kind of like my Mr. Feeney of growing up in church, because I feel like she followed me and people that were around my age all the way to become like our youth group leader at some point too. But from children's church to Sunday school to youth group, it was Miss Patty is her name. And she just was always so encouraging to me. I would like leave her presence and I would just feel better. I would feel like I was special and that I could do anything that I believed I could. If I, like it was that kind of belief. It was that I mattered, and she just deeply cared about me. And it's kind of cool. Like when my wife and I were even considering starting Bridgeway, the church that we're at, that we helped plant. She was one of the people that reached out to me, and I got to connect with her, and she's like, "You could do this. I believe in you. This is so awesome." And her husband wrote a big check to help us get off the ground too. And just that kind of belief, that love, that like faithfulness in my life for many, many years of caring for me and teaching me. And I'm really grateful for Miss Patty. I wish everybody had a Miss Patty in their life. Yeah. That's what came to my mind immediately.
Yeah.
What about you, Abby?
Yeah. So growing up, she's still my mom's best friend, but
I thought you were going to say she's still my mom. I thought you were going to talk about your mom. Really? Well, she's still my mom. But, your mom's best friend.
Right. We called her Mrs. Poole growing up, but she has just always been someone that's, been there for us and encouraged us, babysat us a lot growing up, and She still, is encouraging me. She listens to the podcast. So
What's up, Miss
Hi, Miss
Poole?
Poole. But no, she's just an amazing woman and someone that I look up to. I mean, she does a lot of work with refugees and just is an amazing woman. Yeah. So I really look up to her, and she's someone that, first came to mind when I was reading this article.
Yeah. Somebody that has always been super supportive of me. I mean, obviously, you'd like to think that like all of your relatives would always be super supportive, but I mean, that's not necessarily reality for everyone. But my grandpa, who we affectionately call the Grand Master most of the time because he was a part of the International Order of Oddfellows. He still is, I think, but at one point held the title of like Grand Master. It was one of their things. But anyways, and he had to give a speech, just a random side note, had to give a speech one time, and at the very end it said, "The Grand Master has spoken." And I will never forget that as long as I live.
That's funny.
So even when he prays for like Thanksgiving lunch now, at the end, that's what I say. But no, we still talk like every week. And if I haven't talked to him in a week, like he is calling me and checking in, and just super supportive of what we're doing here at the church. And like when I came on here at the church, not everybody was as encouraging because it was brand new, and, that's scary, and you don't know, like, is it going to stick? Is it going to last? But it didn't matter. Like, he was just very encouraging of me just taking the leap and seeing what would happen. And he's just always been very involved in the community and giving back. He's still... where he goes to church, he loaded up like over 100 bags of mulch the other day and spread them over multiple days because I mean he couldn't do them all in a day, but I'm like, are there no young people at your church that can do this? But like he enjoys it, and that's how he gives back, and he pulls their weeds and all sorts of stuff. So anyways, he's just always been such a great example of just being a servant leader, and then also just how to encourage the younger generation kind of coming up behind you. So yeah, he's great.
That's awesome. Our last article today, this is one that Allison sent me. It's a Fox News article by Bradford Betts titled Texas Church Experiments with AI-Generated Service, Uses ChatGPT for Worship, Sermon, and Original Song. With artificial intelligence seemingly infiltrating every facet of our lives, one church decided to experiment with the technology for one of its services last week. The Violet Crown City Church, located in Austin, Texas, held an AI-generated service on Sunday. This Sunday, we're entering somewhat uncharted territory by letting ChatGPT create the order of worship, prayers, sermon, liturgy, and even an original song for our 10 a.m. service, the church wrote on its official Facebook page. The purpose is to invite us to consider the nature of truth and challenge our assumptions about what God can make sacred and inspired. The church acknowledged such an experiment would be easy to write off, but encouraged its members to keep an open mind. One church attendee said he was able to worship, but the service ultimately lacked the human touch. I'm not sure that AI can actually express the emotions of love and kindness and empathy. So what do you guys think of this article? Allison, I'll let you go first.
I could not believe that this was a thing that was actually happening.
It sounds like a Onion headline or a Babylon Bee thing, right?
Yes. Is this a joke? But then I Googled a little more, and like there was another church in Germany that did the same thing, and they even had screens with AI generated images of people up there giving the sermons. And so a lot of the comments were similar to this one that was in this article. It said like, the content was okay, but like these bots, for lack of a better word, that were up there, like just lacked emotion. Like it was just very deadpan, their faces. And so, yeah, I'm like, I don't know. That just seems... so I'm just fascinated by this because I don't use ChatGPT ever.
Oh, not at all?
Well, when it first came out, I did a couple things, but like since then I haven't got on
I only
there
say
for
that
anything.
because it's been writing my sermons for 3 months.
Right, yeah.
Every single word. So.
Yeah, it sounds just like it.
All right.
So it's just fascinating because, I don't know how you would, implement that emotion and kind of that personal, the examples and just, I don't know.
The soul
of the whole thing. Yeah. And even if it's like, oh, it learns how you talk and okay, but
Yeah.
it doesn't know me. I don't know.
It's the soul, right? Like, and I'm gonna sound like old man over here, and maybe I'll change my tune, but I don't know. Like, it feels like, yes, AI can dispense information, but Christianity and the story of Jesus is an embodied story. The whole story of the scriptures is an embodied story. It's not just a voice. It's not just a guide. It's about a person, and it's actually the person of God who took on a body and walked among us and connected with other real people. And he was fully God and yet fully man, and who hurt and who wept and who was hungry and who was tired. And that's what connects with us soul to soul. And that's the power of having a real life person sharing a message on a Sunday morning, because if it's done well, you see the ache, the pain, the real. This is
relatable.
This is not a dispenser of information. I mean, that's one thing, and information's great, and information's a part of that. But it's an embodied story, flesh and bones and blood and tears and dirt, and all these things matter. And I think they matter so much to the story of God and what God's ultimately going to do, not just to like suck our souls out of here to go to some disembodied heaven, but to restore everything here. And we'll have new bodies. That Jesus had a new body after the resurrection. We'll have a body like that. Like, that's where the story's going. And so I just have this thing where I'm like, I want to put more soul into church, and I want to put more soul and flesh and bones, and our hands getting dirty, our knees getting scraped, dirt under our fingernails, because we're like in this world, and it's people, and it's real. And I love that so much. Real nerdy just for a moment. One of the very first heresies that was actually, many people think that the writings of John the disciple and many writings of Paul in the New Testament were trying to fight against some of these heresies happening in the very first century. It's under this big umbrella called Gnosticism. And Gnosticism taught many things, but Gnosticism was really led by this cornerstone thinking that there is a truth and there is a reality that you can't see. And the goal is to understand and experience this mysterious secret thing that you can't see on this side of life. And so that's why we needed to go someplace else. We need to get out of here. Our bodies don't matter. What we eat doesn't matter. How we have a sexual ethic towards other people doesn't matter. It's all about going someplace else in our minds. And I think in some ways, like, if we take the soul and the body and the people out of church and we make it just about dispensing information, it's another form of Gnosticism today. It's another form of saying you don't need to have a person, and it's not people to people. It's not a community. It's a head experiment. And you can share that head experiment through an AI generated voice, and it's just not the same.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And so I'm trying to, and I'll use elements of AI. I mean, honestly, ChatGPT is really cool. Like, I'll be like, and of course, I'm always thinking about the Roman Empire because I'm a guy. But no, I'll be like, okay, so in the Roman Empire, like, how were women treated? Were they considered good witnesses in court? Were they considered to be like reliable witnesses in court, or all these different kind of things? And it'll give me great information. Yeah. And then what I can do from that information is I can bring it through my personality and the way I communicate and what I can learn from it. And then a real person can dispense the information with soul.
Yeah.
And so overall, kudos to church trying to experiment new ways to do things. I just think that this is going in different direction than I think that the church should be moving towards, which is more hyper local, more hyper personal, more relationship, hyper relationship. Because I think that's ultimately the arc of the story of where the narrative's going is flesh and bones and blood and dirt and this good world that God's restoring that we get to be a part of. And so, yeah, I think heresy. No, I'm not going to say that. I don't think so. But I want to push it a different way. It's just a different thing, and it's just all interesting. I feel like nobody watched any of the Terminator movies to know where this head's heading. And I'm just like the crazy person in the corner being like, "Watch Terminator 2. This doesn't end well for us."
Yeah. I'm just like, oh, did everybody else get a week off? Is that how this works? Like,
somebody had to feed it the information.
Yeah.
The other funny thing, and maybe we can find this image, but like they've been feeding some Bible verses and stories into ChatGPT and AI, and it's been creating images. And this is where the soul and interpretation is so hard, and it just doesn't work yet. There'll be like the story of Jesus flipping over tables, and there's this picture I'd love for us to find. I'd love for us to put this in the show notes, but it's a picture of Jesus doing like a backflip over a table.
Like parkour.
Yeah, parkour over it. And I'm like, ooh, that's why there's no like soul and interpretation. Because it literally says Jesus flipped over tables.
Yeah.
And then what is ChatGPT hearing? He's doing a hardcore parkour over the tables.
I saw that too.
It'll probably learn a little bit later, but it's just an interesting thing that like that's why I think people in our interpretation and scholars and things that we can learn and experiences and conversations, they all matter because we can find ourselves in an interesting place with Jesus. 2,000 years from now, somebody finds that image. So this is what it meant.
Yeah, it all makes sense
so
now.
flexible and athletic.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
I don't know, Abby. What do you think? What are some of your reactions to thinking about church and AI?
I mean, I think it feels a little bit lazy. I mean, I know that's wasn't their
intention.
Intention
They're not like, take
here.
the week off.
Yeah. It feels a little bit lazy, and then also it just, like they said, it just feels not personal.
Yeah,
like
there's no emotion.
Yeah. So I don't think there's a way. I know like people are saying, oh, AI is going to take over jobs. I don't think it's going to take over churches. Like you still need that human connection, because a church wouldn't be a church without those human connections and those relationships that you can actually create, and not just, AI generated nonsense.
Knowledge.
Yeah. If we say this a lot around our church, our faith community at Bridgeway, is like, church is not a service that you go to. It's not a program or a show that you watch. Yeah. Church is a community on mission that you're a part of.
Yeah.
And you have that gathering point because we all need that rally, but the goal is not just to gather, but it's to scatter. And when we gather, there's people and relationships and all those things. That's what makes church, not a guy or a woman on stage talking, not the 3 songs, not all the other trappings of it. Church is a community, and to make it a community, we need each other and we need relationships, and AI is just, I'm not shipping it. I'm not shipping it yet.
It's not there yet. Maybe
like
one
10
day.
years from now, we're going to be like, oh, look how old we all sound. Like, oh, no, I don't think so.
The internet's not real.
We'll see. That internet thing, it might be sticking around.
Well, that's it for this episode of Atypical Talk. If you have any topics or questions or anything like that, you can send those to atypicaltalkpod@gmail.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Atypical Talk Pod. And make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform to get updates when new episodes go live. We hope that these conversations today help you think wider, love deeper, and partner with God to bring the up there down here in your everyday life. Thanks for listening.